very nasty social environment that doesn't actually that doesn't actually make the world better, even though you're trying to shut down stupidities like this video. If the Iranians actually had a good government, they wouldn't need to come here. That's the whole point. This idea that we have to let all of the Iranians in, not vetted. We have to let any Iranian in who wants to come in, not vetted by the government, because we can't trust the government over there. Or we have to shut up about what's going on in Iran. No, the whole point is we want to change the government over there so they don't have to come over here. That's the entire point. And it's not just Samantha Power. Ben Rhodes, who is just a despicable human being. Ben Rhodes is, of course, the former Deputy National Security Advisor and Special Counsel to the President on Foreign Policy. He was a fiction writer who wrote short stories, unpublished short stories from a Brooklyn apartment before he was elevated to foreign policy specialty under the Obama administration. You'll recall that Ben Rhodes is the same guy who lied repeatedly to the American people. The Obama administration had a ridiculous story that they used to push the nuclear deal. And the ridiculous story that they used to push the nuclear deal was that the Iranian regime had now become more moderate, that Hassan Rouhani, the new leader after Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, he was actually a new moderate type, and we had an opening. We had a gap. We were finally going to be able to do something moderate with the Iranians. And it was Rhodes who pushed this nonsense. It, of course, was not true. And then he lied to the American people about what the Iran deal would do. And then he helped ship pallets of cash to the Iranians so they could use them for terror. The Obama administration openly recognized that that cash was going to be used for terrorism against Western sources. Ben Rhodes tweeted this. He said, "The Iranian people are rightfully demanding dignity, less corruption, more opportunity, and greater control over their lives. In looking at U.S. Twitter, it seems lost on too many that this is about what Iranians want for Iran and not about us." First of all, Ben Rhodes, shut it, dude. And if there's one guy who's responsible for the rise of Iran in the region, Ben Rhodes is that guy. But beyond that, if they're rightfully demanding dignity, less corruption, more opportunity, and greater control, might that have something to do with them protesting the same regime you just handed billions of dollars? The same regime you gave regional power? And it's not just Ben Rhodes. John Kerry tweets out too. John Kerry, back from the dead with his collapsing face, looks like a mudslide in the San Fernando Hills. Says, "With humility about how little we know about what's happening inside Iran, this much is clear. It's an Iranian moment and not anyone else's. But the rights of people to protest peacefully and voice their aspirations are universal, and governments everywhere should respect that." He's so boring that when you even read his tweets in John Kerry's voice, you start to fall asleep, and they're less than 280 characters. Let's be clear about something. When he says this is an Iranian moment and we should shut up, and when he says the rights of people to protest peacefully are universal, governments should respect that, those are mutually exclusive statements. If it's an Iranian moment and we should shut up, then we should shut up about how Iran is putting down the protesters. But the point here is that we shouldn't shut up about how Iran is putting down the protesters. We should be siding with the protesters. We should be giving them as much covert aid as possible, because they are part and parcel of bringing down possibly the most evil regime on the planet. The only other possibilities for that title would probably be North Korea and some of the sub-Saharan African regimes that have led to slaughter of their own people. But the notion that John Kerry is some sort of voice of leadership here, and all of this is to say, Susan Rice is saying the same thing. She wrote an op-ed for the New York Times saying that everybody should be quiet, Trump should be quiet. We tried quiet in 2009. How'd it work out for us? Not well. The reason that so many people are saying this is twofold. One, they're embarrassed by Obama's record on this. And they should be embarrassed by Obama's record on this. Obama's record on this is embarrassing. Obama's record on Iran is embarrassing. It is the great blot on his presidency, even more so than Obamacare. His movement of Iran to a central focus of the Middle East demonstrates that his heart was not in the right place when it came to the Middle East. And not only that, I truly believe the Obama administration has blood on its hands for handing billions of dollars to a terror regime, knowing full well that the terror regime was going to use that to fund Hezbollah and Hamas and Islamic Jihad and terrorist groups around the world. So there's the media are working full time to avoid criticizing Obama, because Obama, of course, is their great God, and he must never be ripped or sneered at in any way. Now, the other thing is that there is this feeling among a lot of the intelligentsia that America is evil too. This is what I objected to when President Trump during the campaign was saying things, as I mentioned before, about how the United States was like Russia and we kill people too. Right? That sprang from the sort of Ron Paul isolationist wing of the Republican Party. I objected to it. But that is a mainstream thought on the left. There are a lot of people on the left who believe that America is a negative force in the world. Obama believed this. He believed that America had done terrible things across the globe, and that as America shrunk her influence, that somehow this would make the world a better place. He believed that America was a participant in domestic in domestic evils that were on par with some of the things that were happening abroad. I remember he gave a speech at the United Nations, and at the speech at the United Nations, he criticized America's policies on policing. I remember this because I wrote about it. I used to actually watch all of his speeches and write them up. And there's a reason that the Iranian government is jumping on that. The Iranian government loves the perspective of the left on the United States. The Iranian government believes that the United States is an evil place domestically, and that America is a place filled with horror and awful and evil and garbage. That's what they believe. So Ayatollah Khamenei, who is the current Ayatollah, he wrote, tweeted this out. The U.S. government commits oppression inside the U.S. too. U.S. police murder black women, men, and children for no justifiable reason. The murderers are acquitted in U.S. courts. This is their judicial system. And they slam other countries in our country's judicial system. And so America is hypocritical and terrible. That's the line that Khamenei is using. And he's not alone. Right? The Huffington Post political commentator named Alex Mohaher tweeted, quote, the Iranian protests, the resistance, and Women's March are all the same. Across the world, people are fighting autocracies and oppressive regimes. President Trump is no different than the oppressive Ayatollahs in Iran. You know how crazy you have to be to believe this? But this is a mainstream thought on the left. I tweeted out in the middle of these protests that you want to see true courage. Look at the women who are protesting a regime that will jail them for taking off a hijab. Right? Those are the people who are brave, not the women wearing pussy hats in New York City. There's no risk to that. To be brave, you actually have to undergo risk. It is no risk to protest on the streets of New York or Los Angeles because this is a free country. But I'm not seeing the Women's March. I'm not seeing Black Lives Matter have one damn thing to say about what's going on in Iran. Maybe Black Lives Matter doesn't have that agenda, but the Women's March certainly should. The Women's March is talking about women's rights. You want to talk about a place with no women's rights? Talk about Iran. But apparently they have nothing to say. And Khamenei knows it. The far left in the United States believes that America is a force for evil in the world. They always have, the far left. And that's why America's enemies have always used the far left as